The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome in. We are live here at Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett, and yes, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. Gentlemen, good morning. How are we today? Happy Wednesday.
It's a great hump day. Happy hump day, Kinner. Hump day.
Whoop, whoop. Gotta love it. I like when the Bearcats. You're in a better mood. You're in a much better mood coming off of a Bearcats victory. I like Bearcats victory, Elliot.
Well, here's the thing about the Cincinnati Bearcats. They play better when they know they need to get to a different team for more NIL money. So they all played well, and we'll talk about it later on. But yeah, it was good. It was a good game.
I thought all these guys were going to the NBA.
Yeah, that's what they told me. But good for them. I'm happy for them. They played harder yesterday. Again, we'll get into all of it, but they played harder yesterday than I've seen them play in a game this year.
That's what you want in the postseason.
Yeah, that's why you play in March. That's why you play in March. March 12th. Welcome to the season.
I'm just waiting to find out that there was a mean game of dodgeball that was played on Tuesday evening, or on Monday evening, I should say. But we'll find out. Maybe there was.
We've gone to darts.
Ooh.
We've gone to darts.
I like darts. I love darts, you know. Maybe that's the ultimate motivator right there. But we welcome you guys in, again, Off the Bench. Hope everyone has had a great week up to this point and have a lot planned for you today. Appreciate Jay Morrison coming on yesterday. I know especially all the Bengals beat writers, super busy right now, just kind of waiting and covering the Bengals as they kind of navigate through this week of the tampering period and free agency and all that fun stuff. A couple things he said yesterday that we're going to dive into coming up around the corner. There was one suggestion. We keep talking about Jamar, obviously, and Trey Hendrickson. Trey being the most intriguing one just because of, obviously the way that the market reset on him pretty drastically, actually in a way that might favor the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about that. But he had a suggestion about one thing that the Bengals could do that can give him more money, keep him happy for the 2025 season, and then split ways with him after this upcoming season. We'll get to that coming up around the corner. We're going to talk some baseball coming up around the corner as well with Clay Snowden. He's going to join us about 45 minutes from now, and then we'll talk some Bearcats because, again, with what we saw yesterday, maybe it is. You get to the postseason, you get to the tournament, it's that, oh my gosh, if we lose, our season's done. We go home, you start playing with more urgency. We saw that urgency yesterday. We couldn't figure out that line, how Cincy was favored by so much after losing by 11 the previous time against this opponent not too long ago. So how in the world were they favored by? Well, Vegas knows. So there you go. We'll talk about that more coming up. But Jake, good morning. How are we? I mean, you're always in a good mood because you're not a Bearcats fan. You're always
it's a good day. I lost some money on Oklahoma State yesterday, but that's all right. We'll turn around and bounce back stronger with Iowa State today. So
that's right.
Let's go Cyclones.
Casey, good morning. How are we?
It's a good
Good. Good. I'm a little bit tired. Watched FC lose last night in horrible fashion. Yeah, that was a tough one. I think I didn't get to bed until like 12:30, something like that. So I'm a bit tired this morning, but we'll recover.
Whenever I find out in the morning after a game that FC played, I really hope for the next 10 seconds that they won until Casey tells me that they lost.
Yeah. Tigress.
Is it Tigress or Tigres?
No idea. And I don't care either.
Fair.
All right. So we'll get into all this coming up here around the corner. Oh, yeah, the other thing, too, I want to dive into, Chase Burns was interviewed by MLB Network. He kind of laid out his goals for the upcoming season. He's super competitive, he says, and he wants to do something that Rhett Lauder did. And if he does accomplish this goal, what does that mean for the Reds? We'll talk about that coming up around the corner as well. But let's get it to Elliot. Elliot's headlines as we kick off the show on a Wednesday.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines. Whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered.
That's right, I do.
Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
It's Conference Championship Week. It's one of the best sports weeks of the year.
Conference Championship Week. We'll start with college basketball. The Bearcats Talked about it. They won by nearly 20 yesterday against Oklahoma State. Day, 21 points. Reed, 19. I was going to say Donovan Mitchell.
That would be nice.
Yeah, Mitchell at 18 points, 15 boards. There were 39 turnovers in this game. 39 turnovers. Outrageous. Outrageous. 23 of them, I believe, by Oklahoma State. The Bearcats had 18 steals. 18 steals. They play Iowa State, as Kinner mentioned, and Jacob mentioned today at 12:30. So at 12:30, the Bearcats are back at it to defend their season. Montana, they advanced in the Big Sky tournament. They beat Idaho by 23. Lamar, these slides past Nichols, 58-55 in the Southland tourney. UCF, how about this Big 12 win? They crushed Utah 87-72. Gonzaga, I saw the chat was talking about it. They win another West Coast Conference title. They beat St. Mary's for the first time this year.
Combined 1 for 31 from 3 in that game.
Whoa.
Gonzaga 1 for 15. St. Mary's 0 for 16.
Yikes. Keeping with the Big Sky, going back to it, Northern Colorado, they won by 30 against Montana State. You had Florida International winning by 3 against Western Kentucky, Conference USA. Shout out to the Conference USA. You Bearcats are a part of the Conference USA for a little bit. Bryant beats the University at Albany. 91-78 in the American East tourney. Florida A&M, they beat Prairie View A&M in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Sacred Heart, they take care of Fairfield 71-58. The Cuse, it's always March when the Cuse are involved. The Cuse, they beat Florida State 66-62 in the ACC. They covered 3.5 there. St. Francis, PA, 46-43. They won against Central Connecticut State. Massive upset. I think they were 12-point underdogs in that one. They are 16-17. Central Connecticut 25-7. They win 46-43. Yikes. Kansas State, they get past Arizona State 71-66. McNeese, they win by about 19 points in the Southland Conference tourney against Northwestern State. Delaware, the miracle run ends, but they kept it close.
They did.
76-72, the final. NC Wilmington's going dancing. Robert Morris, how about this? Robert Morris wins your Horizon League, Justin Kinner. Was Robert Morris the favorite coming in or no?
Yeah, they were the one. They won the regular season as well.
They were the one seed good. Well, they beat Youngstown State by about 11 yesterday, so good for them. Maine, they upset Vermont. 57-42. 42 points for Vermont.
Sounds like a UC score.
It does sound like a UC score. Cal, they beat Virginia Tech in double overtime, 82-73.
That overhit with about 2 minutes left in the second overtime.
Really?
Incredible.
How about that? Notre Dame, they won 55-54. Pittsburgh's coach, not happy with that result. Not happy.
I don't think we as a program should say that they won.
Don't think so?
They were awarded the right to move on to the next round.
That's tough. If you haven't seen the end, go check that one out because that was a bad one. NBA, moving over to the NBA, the Cavaliers, they win 109-104 over the Nets without Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland put up 30 points. They have now won an NBA season best 15 games in a row. They clinched their playoff spot, I want to say 2 weeks ago. So they are on fire. Ending the season. Good for them. The Pacers last night, they beat the Bucks 115-114. If nobody saw that one ended, Pacers were down 3 with about 5 seconds left. Tyrese Halliburton puts up a prayer from beyond the arc, makes it, ties it. He was fouled and won 3 to end the game. The Pacers beat the Bucks. How about that? Moving over to the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds win 8-5 over the Rockies. Fairchild, Benson, McLean, Ellie, Hayes, Stevenson, CES all get hits yesterday. Brady Singer, he struck out 7 in 4 innings without allowing a run. Sam Moll did get rocked. He gave up 4 earned runs in his lone inning of work. Ian Jabot pitched okay. Gave up a run, but he was all right. Going over to Tiger Woods. How about this? Unfortunately, Tiger Woods announced yesterday that his season is over after it not really even beginning. He ruptured his Achilles. So Tiger Woods will not be competing in the remainder of this season. That's a brutal blow for those of us who like to watch Tiger Woods play in Augusta. So,
I refuse to admit it's over, so Major 16 will just be that much cooler.
That's right. Tiger's going to keep going forever, and he's good. NFL news. I would say not a ton. A little slower of a day yesterday. I only got 2 of them. Leonard Floyd, he signed with the Falcons. DeAndre Hopkins is going to Baltimore. DeAndre Hopkins notably terrible in the Super Bowl. Absolutely terrible.
A little slower yesterday, and that's why a lot of us said going into Monday that it was so important the Bengals got these contracts done. Yeah. 72 of the top 100 free agents going into Monday have already been signed.
Really?
So if you're going to sign top-end talent, young guys that can be long-term solutions, you got to get that done early. We're talking about Teven Jenkins so much on the show. He's the thumbnail today because he's the only option left that's worth a damn at guard. So it's so important to get contracts done early in free agency. We're already 3/4 of the way through the top 100.
How about that? And finally, we mentioned it, FCC. I saw Casey. They had like 30% possession yesterday. Usually, like you see soccer, like I always look at the shots on goal and then I do possession. Usually it's somewhat close. It's usually like 60-40, I feel like. It was like 70-30. That was outrageous.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And on top of that, I mean, they were leading for most of the time. I think it was like in the 60th minute when they scored their first goal.
How about that?
Tigers.
3-1 the final score there in the CONCACAF tournament. Is it a tournament or is it league play? Is it league play? I don't know. CONCACAF. So that's it. Those are your headlines.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's switch over to the Bengals free agency. A couple of clips from our conversation with Jay Morrison yesterday. Then we got a lot of Reds and baseball talk coming up here. Clay Stoughton, again, going to join us coming up here shortly in just a few segments as well. So plenty more to dive into, more off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers when we come back. You know, my team, they get the number 2 pick, and I'm like, I guess that's great, right? But like, it's a bad draft. So it's a bad draft to have the number 2 pick. I hear for weeks and months about the Bengals going to free up all this cap space, and it's like, well, you freed up a lot of cap space for a bad free agency class. I feel underwhelmed. Like, I mean, I love free agency, and we've talked about it a lot, and there's good players in it. But am I wrong in saying that like this seems like an underwhelming free agency class and just window in general. Like I know we're spending a lot of time on it. I'm still interested in it. That's what makes the NFL king is it's a bad free agent class, and I'm still hanging on every update. I'm refreshing Twitter constantly, just trying to get the latest. But I do feel like this is an underwhelming class. If you're a team that has a lot of cap space, unfortunately, I don't feel like you're going to maximize that cap space with this free agent class. And I like that's the thing with Cincinnati. I don't feel like they've maximized it either. I know we're going to talk about Teven Jenkins right now, how that would at least make you feel like you've come out with something. But if not, whatever the Bengals do the rest of the way, whether it's their fault or not, this really hasn't been the sexiest free agent class. I don't know how much improvement they could have truly made unless they just went for every single big name possible.
Yeah, I think that's kind of something that we saw coming, or at least saw formulating early in this cycle. Tee Higgins franchise tag, Trey Smith franchise tag, no doubt, without question, consensus top 2 players in free agency, not even hitting the market. And then the best player defensively in free agency, probably Milton Williams, and he had one great year of production. It wasn't a very sexy free agency class. You weren't going to make a ton of massive additions. I think that's why it was so important that the Bengals got the additions they made. They got them right. And I think that's the worry as of right now is without as many options available or still available, I don't know how much wiggle room the Bengals have when it comes to signings if they are to miss out on a guy like a Teven Jenkins.
Do you think the Bengals look at, I don't want to call it a distraction. I know you guys kind of touched on it yesterday. But when you look at the 3 key needs that the Bengals clearly have to get done at some point, or at least you'd think it's on their mind, do you think like their split focus on bringing other guys in, which one do you think weighs more on them? Because they have to focus on T, Trey, and Jamar 100%, but you also have an entire roster to take care of. And I do think it's fair to ask, like where is your attention right now? Because for me, I think all their attention is not on those 3. I think it's on the outside. And whether or not that's right, that's up to you. But for me, it's just like I think they're splitting their focus. And all they have to do was get that done, and they refuse to do it. So my question to you guys is, do you think that their attention's completely split right now?
I would, obviously we don't know, and it's just guessing, and I think it would probably be, short-sighted to blame the Bengals front office and say that they can't focus on multiple things at once, but I would wager that over the last 48 hours, probably on to the next 72 through today, their focus is on the external free agents. They had 3 months to focus exclusively on Jamar, T, and Trey, and they didn't make any progress. Yeah. So I think unless someone picks up the phone and calls about a Trey Hendrickson trade offer that they obviously haven't gotten yet, or Tee Higgins comes back to the table with a new number, or Jamar Chase answers the phone, I still think that's where I'm at on his extension, is that he's just not interested in signing one. I think the Bengals are rightfully focused on external free agents because, like I said, if you're not focused on that for the first 2 days, you're not going to get any. Yeah. So if the Bengals have any kind of confidence that they're going to be able to get Jamar and T done and figure out the Trey Hendrickson situation to a level where we'll be at least somewhat happy about it, I think they're doing the right thing by being focused on the outside. The worst case scenario is to obviously lose all 3 of these guys. But the only thing, as bad as that is to only keep these 3 guys. Duke Tobin said last at the Combine that we don't want to just pay more for the same roster, and I think that's exactly what would be happening if they focused on those 3 guys throughout the first couple of days of free agency. You wouldn't be able to make any external additions. So it's a tough pill to swallow for Bengals fans because obviously we want them focused on those guys. Those extensions are the things that mean the most in terms of getting us back to contention, but it's a tough boat to be in right now, and they put themselves in this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we talked with Jay about that yesterday. I was surprised. Jay said it really wasn't a distraction. Like when I think we opened up the conversation with him, like, hey, with so much talk, I mean, we're focusing so much on Trey, T, and Jamar. You would have to think that the front office is as well, but how do you do that while keeping an eye and make sure you're navigating through free agency and preparing for the draft? He seemed to make it sound like he didn't believe it was too big of a deal. I don't, and I'm not saying Jay's wrong. I don't know how it could not be. I don't know how you're giving it your all in free agency while also having so much weighing on that. And it's not just the distraction part. It's how do you know how much to target a pass rusher in free agency, assuming like without knowing if you're going to have Trey Hendrickson or not? And how do you know whether to be aggressive with getting wide receivers in free agency unless you're 1,000,000% confident you can get a deal done with Tee Higgins or not? And if you are confident you can get it done, why not just get it done ahead of time?
Right.
Obviously, we've never been in one of those war rooms. We've never been in one of those boardrooms. We've never been, in a negotiation in the NFL. So maybe we're oversimplifying it by saying just get it done. Just sign here, have your people get back to my people and we'll call it a day. It's clearly a complicated thing. but just other teams make it seem easier than what the Bengals do. And we've spent a lot of time on that throughout. But the one thing that, we talked about this free agent class not being that strong and that great. There's no pass rushers left. And that's what makes this thing with Trey Hendrickson so interesting, because we keep talking about, the Bengals, they might just, they've let him go out to try to pursue a trade. If they find a trade partner, could they move on from him? And then what? How do you go, and are you going to rely on rookies to come in to be your primary pass rush? Now I think you've even taken a step back further from last season in that department, and it wasn't very good last year. So it's a tough spot to be in. There was one suggestion that Jay Morrison said on yesterday's show that I actually really liked, and I wonder if this is probably the direction that they're going to go in. A suggestion of how you extend Trey Hendrickson, by restructuring this contract for this upcoming season and then parting ways after. Here's Jay Morrison on Trey Hendrickson on yesterday's show.
The Trey Hendrickson thing is interesting. I mean, they granted him the request to go seek a trade. A lot of times when that happens with a player of his caliber, it happens pretty quickly. Like we saw Joe Tooney when the Chiefs gave him the opportunity to do that, and bam, I think it was within hours he landed a deal with the Bears. And we haven't seen that from Trey. So that leads me to believe that either the compensation isn't where the Bengals want it to be, or the extension after the trade isn't where Trey wants it to be. Trey's maybe seeing that his market isn't quite what he thought it was. So I really think that opens the door for his return. And, probably I don't think they're going to give him a 3-year deal, anything like that. I could see them just saying, hey, okay, we'll double what your base salary. He's set to make 16 this year. We'll double that to 32, and then we'll let you hit free agency next year. And then that way he's not sour. He knows he can still make another run at a big contract next year. But they do this all the time. Duke talked about at the combine about parallel paths, and especially with Jamar and T having the same agent, you're kind of working those things together. That not just this organization, any NFL team is very, very adept at multi.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say, like, it's, if you're able to do something like that and you're able to make Trey Hendrickson happy, because that's what Bengals fans are worried about. They're not worried about not having Trey and T and Jamar here. That's all going to happen. How happy are they going to be, and how big of a distraction is this mess going to be once the season starts? We're going to have unhappy players, and that culture that we talk about that Zach Taylor brings, is that going to vanish into thin air? I don't know if last year's the start to the season was all the Jamar contract stuff and the T requesting a trade and the Trey requesting retirement. I don't know what the vibes are, and I don't know if anybody really does. But I think if the Bengals went out and said, hey, we're going to pay you what you're worth, at least what you think you're worth for this season, after that, it's on you, man. It's on you. I really do think that's the best possible outcome here, because I don't think they're trading him. I think we're way too far gone to have him be traded. I don't think they're signing him, because I just don't – the Bengals don't do that. We can talk about this and that. The Bengals do not sign 30-plus-year-old defensive players. I wish they did. They didn't. Or they don't, excuse me. So I think that would be like a sign, like, to, or at least a show of respect, as it were, to Trey Hendrickson. I wouldn't hate that. I really wouldn't hate that.
I like the idea, to be honest. When he said that, I didn't think about it, but it's like, I think the big thing is, it's not that the Bengals aren't willing to spend $30 million a year on a pass rusher. I think it's the holdup is you're in your 30s now, and it's not wanting that long-term deal with a guy in their 30s at a position that history shows that regression usually starts for that position when you get into your 30s. It's just them trying to hedge their money, if you will, trying to be, proactive as far as that goes. So I think that this accomplishes a lot. You're giving him market value for this upcoming season. The only thing he's not getting is that long-term contract. But hey, if you go out and perform again the way you have the last couple of seasons, you're going to hit the free agent market, and you're going to get to go negotiate whatever you want with every team in the National Football League and get the contract that you're looking for and the stability elsewhere. And then the Bengals get that production for this upcoming season. They have the cap space to take care of them this upcoming season. And then they have a whole season, off-season, draft, everything to prepare for life after Trey Hendrickson when this upcoming season is done. I think we're trying to figure out how the T thing is going to unfold, how Jamar, when that's going to get done. Trey Hendrickson, That's the path of least resistance to me, and I like that one. I think that one makes the most sense as far as that goes. Unless, Jacob, you're wanting a long-term extension. Do you want Trey long-term? I think I know that answer, but do you like Jay's suggestion, or do you just want them to get a contract done in general to keep the dominant pass rusher here for a few more seasons?
I would love a long-term extension. I don't think that's going to get done. I don't think there's any way. Elliot's right. That's not something they do. And we can continue to talk about outside the box. You can have all the cash and all the cap that you want. If you're not willing to do it, it doesn't matter what kind of cash you have available. So I don't think any kind of extension is going to get done. I do think we've waited too long. If a team was willing to pay him 30+ and give up the compensation for him, it would have already been done. It would have been done within the week of the trade request. So the fact that we're still waiting here, spinning our fingers and we don't know what's going on with it, I think he's going to stay. And then the question becomes, how much do you care about his happiness? If you call his bluff and you're okay with a 2-game sit out, pay him 16.5. What's the reason to pay him 32? Now, if you think he's actually going to sit out a whole season, double it, see how you make him happy, and everything along those lines. But I'd be pretty shocked if they just straight up double that contract. I think we're going to see the Bengals call his bluff on sitting out, see how long that lasts in the training camp, because in all honesty, that retirement request lasted, 12 hours?
Yeah.
So I don't think he exactly has a lot of faith built up in terms of his threats with the Bengals front office. With all due respect, I know he's a great player, but he requested retire. He said he was going to retire without an extension. He was at practice on Monday. So I don't necessarily believe that he's going to hold out an entire season either. So
who do you think is going to be proven wrong after this season? Because I'm going to work under the assumption that he's going to play. If he plays quote unquote unhappy and he's sad or whatever you want to say, and he plays poorly, right? I think the front office can look at that and they can say, that's why you don't pay him $32 million. Right. He had 5 sacks this year, right? Or he balls out again. He gets the same amount of, maybe a little less. I'll say 15 sacks. We'll say Trey has 15 sacks, has another great year. And then it's after this, it's like, okay, maybe that's why you pay him. Yeah. But who do you think is going to look worse at the end of this? Because I know the Bengals are the heavy favorites on that front. But I do think there's a world where Trey plays this year, and maybe you can blame it on the fact that he's working on little faith of the organization not paying him. But there is a chance that he doesn't play well this year, and the Bengals save themselves $30 million. I
think this is I don't want to hate on Trey Hendrickson
because
obviously I want him to be our edge rusher for the next however many years, but every statistic would tell you that this is probably the last season that he's going to be an elite pass rusher.
Yeah.
So if the hang-up is truly 2 years versus 3 years, I don't know how mad I am at the Bengals for not jumping at a 3-year, $30 million deal. If he's willing to sign a 2-year, $64 million extension or something along those lines with the guarantees making sense for both sides, then that's something I think the Bengals should be all over. That third year scares me as much as it seems to scare Mike Brown in the front office.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of all the three, the Trey Hendrickson one, them being skittish on that one, that's the one that I think is the most forgivable.
Yeah.
It just seems like a bigger deal. Like if the defense was good, you could I think fans could forgive this one a little more. I think it's just because the
100%.
defense is so bad. There's no good pass rushers in free agency. And although there is good pass rushers in the draft, to expect a rookie to come in to replace the production of Trey Hendrickson and feel good about a defense that was one of the worst last year to take a major step forward without Trey Hendrickson, it's just bad timing. There's a lot of bad timing. That's why I said earlier, the free agency class is not very good. The trade market for Hendrickson, it's not there. You could just force him to play, but how hard will he play? Mentality. If he feels like he's been disrespected, will he play hard for it? There's a lot of moving parts to this. It's unfortunate, but we'll see how this unfolds as we follow it more throughout the week. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, the Bengals, with all the moves that they have made, not the sexiest of moves, however, but when you look at their moves, you look at the Steelers, you look at the Ravens, you look at the Browns, how are the Bengals stacking up in the AFC North right now compared to the other teams regarding their movement? We'll get to all of that when we come back. Plus, we'll get to some baseball. Clay Snowden will join us coming up here around the corner as well. More Off the Bench when we come back. All right, we welcome you back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Okay, last thing here from our conversation with Jay Morrison yesterday, BengalsTalk.com. Look, the Bengals haven't made the sexiest of moves, but to be honest, I don't think a lot of teams have made the sexiest of moves. I don't think there's been a lot of sexiest moves to be had. We talked about Hopkins going to the Ravens a little bit ago. 5 years ago, that's a hell of a move. That's a heck of a move. Right now, I don't know. It's an okay move, not the greatest, not the worst. It is what is what it is. The Ravens finally make a move yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw, but there's a couple radio hosts out of Pittsburgh that said that the Aaron Rodgers thing is in typical Aaron Rodgers form, that he might need a couple weeks to decide on what he's going to do. And in typical Aaron Rodgers fashion, he's going to operate on his timeline, not on the other team's timeline. This is the big criticism of Aaron Rodgers. You would think that, yes, you want to do what's best for you, but at the same time, like, what's best for you is to make a decision quickly so that the team that you do sign with has as much time as possible to attack free agency, to get prepare for the draft, and to build a plan to help you succeed. I don't know how Aaron Rodgers could take 2, 3, 4 weeks to decide, go to a team that missed out on a window to provide weapons for him. You don't want to go sign certain guys if that's not going to be your quarterback. It just, Aaron Rodgers, I'm a big Aaron Rodgers guy, but my goodness, why does he have to make everything so damn difficult at the end of the day? I think he has two good options to go to, whether you want to go to New York and throw the ball to Neighbors, if you want to go to Pittsburgh and throw the ball to DK Metcalf and George Pickens. The list goes, he has good options as far as where he can go to throw. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. You want to go throw the ball to Justin Jefferson? It's not like there's bad options out there for him to go throw the football to. What do you need 2 to 3 weeks to decide unless it's an ayahuasca trip? I don't get it. Aaron Rodgers frustrates me with how he's going about this, to be honest.
What do you want? Like, what does he want?
I don't know.
Just make up your mind. It seems like it's between the Giants and the Steelers. Couldn't be two different situations. The Giants are not going to be good this year. You're going to, try to bring along some young guys. They're probably going to take a quarterback high in the draft that you're going to have to be a mentor for. Do you like New York? Do you like living in that city? Do you like playing in MetLife? If you do, go to the Giants. Do you want to try to talk yourself into being a contender? Go to Pittsburgh. It really seems that simple. So how the money can't be that different. There's no way that there's some kind of massive discrepancy between these contracts, because then a decision would have already been made. Yeah. They have to be very, very close. And you're just deciding between playing for the Giants and playing for the Steelers. And if it was two similar situations, I would lean more towards understanding why he's taken some time to think about it. But they couldn't be more different. So what do you want? Just make up your mind. It really doesn't seem that hard.
Yeah, I'm all good. I know Reed is the first one to say it, and I think out of us in this room to say that Aaron Rodgers is just, that act is so tired. I'm all good. He said he was going to retire a while ago. I don't know what he's trying to prove at this moment. Maybe he's bored. Maybe he doesn't. He's got nobody else to talk to. I think he's kicked everybody else out of his life. So maybe that's it. Outside of Pat McAfee, he's just got nobody to talk to. So he's just going to go play football every year. I don't think Aaron Rodgers at this current stage is going to be a competitive player. I think he's fine. I think he's okay. But if you're talking about winning championships, winning Super Bowls, and that's what I consider to be competitive, I don't think he's in that ballpark. I really don't. And Jacob was the first one to mention, I don't know if it was this week, but Aaron Rodgers' stats weren't bad last year. They weren't the worst. It's just there's something about the guy that you don't want to cheer for. B, the teammates and coaches clearly have issues with. I think he fired 3 staff members last year allegedly. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about Aaron Rodgers. If I was the Pittsburgh Steelers and I was trying to move on, then yeah, I'd be like, I'm going to go with a young quarterback. I'm going to try my hand and see if we can develop somebody, because this old quarterback thing, it's just not going to keep working.
I can't afford to have Rodgers go to Pittsburgh because I do love rooting for him and watching him play. Yep. So I hope he ends in New York or Minnesota or somewhere like that where I don't have to play him twice a year and I can just keep rooting for one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch in the league.
But if you have to bet over under half of a playoff win for the remainder of Rodgers' career, are you taking the over or the under?
If he goes to Pittsburgh, I'd take the over.
No, you wouldn't. Come on. Pittsburgh doesn't make if they have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, they're not winning a playoff. They'll get to the playoffs.
They could, man.
They won't.
I think he's gonna. I think he has another year or two left of high level football.
And look, and also if you look at the quarter, especially look at like the Sam Darnold thing, playing for the Jets, playing for the Panthers, horrible. And then all of a sudden you go to an organization that's actually pretty solid, that has pass catchers, and all of a sudden you look like you know how to play the position. I think that could be Aaron Rodgers if he ends up going to Minnesota or Pittsburgh, although Minnesota's not in that mix. As you talked about, Jake, it sounds like it's New York. I wouldn't go to the Giants either. I wouldn't go to the Giants either if I'm Aaron Rodgers. Pittsburgh makes the most sense. If there is anything left in the tank, like Elliott doesn't think there is, we think there's something there. One of us, one side will be proven right if he goes to Pittsburgh, because I think if there is anything left, it will come out in Pittsburgh if there is anything left. I will say the Steelers, you made a hell of a move going to get DK Metcalf. That's a hell of a move to have a backup caliber quarterback throwing them the football. And that is not good, because Pickens was throwing temper tantrums with Russell Wilson last year. And now you have another diva wide receiver coming in that was throwing tantrums last year with the quarterback that threw for over 4,000 yards and was getting him the football. I don't know, man. This could be a disaster. I think they need a veteran quarterback in there. I think they need Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers needs them. I think they both need one another, to be honest. I think that's kind of where we're at with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we have a clip of it at some point. We're going to play it today, but I don't know when that's going to be. But you asked him, what's the AFC North like? Jay Morrison yesterday, sorry. But he was down on the Steelers. I don't think there's any reason to be high on the Steelers. In this league, you have to have a quarterback. You have to. I know Jacob doesn't count Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts is a damn good quarterback, and then win a Super Bowl. It's very rarely where a no quarterback team goes on to win a championship. Nick Foles is the only one I can think of. So I think that the Steelers making that move for DK, yeah, sure, it's great. Who's throwing him the football? Is it 45-year-old Russell Wilson or 55-year-old Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. Either way, I'm not going to say that I'm exactly high on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm tired of that shtick. They have to be bad enough to get a quarterback. They have to. Because this thing where they win 9-10 games is good and all, and they make the playoffs, but eventually that's not acceptable. And I think Pittsburgh fans are about tired of it as well.
You mentioned Jay Morrison. We talked to him about this on yesterday's show. Look, with the moves that the Bengals have made, look, I like the moves they've made. They're not the sexiest of moves, but they got two guys who are proven winners coming from winning franchises that played in high-stakes games that are going to come in and compete and elevate the defense. So are we talking elevate them into the top half of the league? I don't know yet. We got to see what they do in the draft and see what they do with the back half of free agency. But even with the deficiencies, the Bengals won 9 games last year. They were a game out of the playoffs. We talked about this on yesterday's show, how they make the playoffs. Not a lot of playoff teams wanted to face Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, and that bad Cincinnati Bengals team, right? So how do the Bengals stack up to the AFC North? Obviously, the Ravens is Super Bowl contender. The Steelers trying to figure themselves out. The Browns have the number 2 pick. The biggest move they've made this offseason is keeping a disgruntled Myles Garrett. Here's what Jay Morrison, BengalsTalk.com, had to say about how the Bengals stack up in the AFC North. You look at the AFC North, obviously Cleveland's not a threat to Cincinnati at this point. Baltimore still the favorite out of the AFC North at this point, barring any drastic additions for the Bengals at this point to help elevate them. You look at Pittsburgh right now, obviously adding DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers rumors, kind of floating around out there. How the AFC North kind of stacking up, in your opinion, with a lot of the teams with deficiencies there and having to address some of those? How's the AFC North kind of stacking up in the early stages of free agency and the draft coming up around the corner, and how that impacts Cincinnati, of course?
Yeah, I think Baltimore's still the team to beat. I'm not ready to write off the Browns. They've got an issue at quarterback, obviously with the Deshaun Watson situation, but that's still a good enough roster where if they get some pieces in the draft, they could be a really good team. Steelers, I don't know. What are they going to do at quarterback if it's not Aaron Rodgers? And even if it is that the answer? I mean, he's getting older. He didn't look that great last year when he was healthy. The year before, obviously the Achilles. So that's a big issue. It's been their issue for years, and they haven't, since Ben left, and they haven't been able to solve it. So I think the Bengals are in a good spot. I would put them right now as probably, you got Burrow, Chase, Higgins. You're right there, and they've got some holes to fill, obviously, but I think they're right there with Baltimore. Pittsburgh, Cleveland still have some work to do.
Man, so again, I know we're going to get to Clay Snowden coming up. We're going to switch gears to baseball as we wrap up this conversation. I'm not saying Jay's wrong because I still think if you look at how the season ended last year, the Bengals were one of the hottest teams in football. Steelers plummeted heading into the postseason. To say that it's the Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, Browns, how we feel about that right now in this current situation. Let's say Aaron Rodgers is a Steeler. Do we still feel that it's Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, Browns? Does Aaron Rodgers surpass the Steelers over the Bengals in your opinion?
No, I don't think so, but it certainly puts them comfortably in the playoff mix for me in the AFC, at least fighting for one of those wild card spots. I think if you listen to what Jay said right there, he said the Steelers have a lot of work to do. I think a bulk of that work is finding a quarterback, and if you sign Aaron Rodgers, you've done, that work. So I think, that if they go that route and have Rodgers playing quarterback for them next year, I'd pretty comfortably have them in the wild card mix in the AFC. Not quite ahead of the Bengals, though. Close though.
I'm going to say the Steelers have a bad year. I'm going to say
you
that
haven't learned.
I'm going to say it every season until I get it right. I think that, and what surprised me about that answer, the Cleveland Browns. I'm not a Browns guy. I don't like the Cleveland Browns, and no disrespect to you, I think there's some Browns fans that are absolutely delusional. But I do think that you guys, didn't weigh properly what Deshaun Watson, what that whole situation, all that drama, what that means to an entire team. If the Browns go out and get a quarterback that's somewhat serviceable, I do think it changes the attitude and it changes the environment of being a Cleveland Brown. And I think it makes the Browns somewhat competitive next season. I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns won, at least doubled their win total. I think the Browns could be competitive next season for sure, and they'd be in that.
You're
mix.
saying 6 wins, they double their win total.
Well, I'm going to say at least. I just think I remember we had this debate on the show, and you discounted the fact that they hate playing for that guy, and I really do believe it. I'm going to believe it until my heart says otherwise. I think they looked different when Jameis Winston was out there. I did. I thought they looked like a completely different team. Didn't mean they won a lot of games, but I thought they played better. It was a better product to watch. I think they're one quarterback away from, and they've been one quarterback away for 500 years. But if the Browns were to do anything this year, they've got to get that quarterback right. I know we were linking, or at least Jacob sent me the DM, and maybe they get Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins changes what the Cleveland Browns are next year. I think he makes them at least the win total. I bet I would put that win total at like 7.5. And I bet they might win 8 or 9 games with a Kirk Cousins type quarterback. Or maybe you go out and you get a Cam Ward. And maybe it's exciting. Maybe Cam Ward's great. I think that makes a little bit of a difference too. So who knows? I think the AFC North is going to be interesting next year. And I think the Ravens are by far and away the favorites and should be the favorites to win the division.
Yeah, we can get back into more of this coming up in a bit. The AFC North outlook, especially with the draft coming up, more free agency. I mean, we're just 2 days in. This is day 3, obviously. Still a lot more to dive into there. All right, Clay Snowden, he's been logged in for a few minutes. We appreciate him being patient, but we're going to switch gears to baseball. Major League Baseball. We'll talk some Reds coming up around the corner as well. We have plenty more coming your way, more off the bench when we come back. All right, we welcome you back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Justin Kenner, Elliot Ruring, Jacob Tissa with you here. Casey McAllister in the producer chair, and we introduce our next guest, Clay Snowden, going to join us and talk a little baseball here. Clay, we appreciate your time. Welcome. How are we today? Happy Wednesday.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, listen, so look, we've been spending a lot of time on football this week and baseball, when spring training starts, I'm just so jacked to watch baseball, listen to baseball, to react to anything we see spring training wise. But then after about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm over it. I don't care. I'm kind of getting bored with spring training. I'm ready for opening day. It's about 15 days from now. Where are you at with spring training right now? Like, I feel like we've learned enough, right? Like, can we just hurry up and speed this along a little bit?
Hey, come on now. We can't be talking about the Browns quarterback situation again and just ignore spring training, can we?
You don't talk Browns. Don't talk Browns. It gets ugly.
No, I know what you mean, because spring training has that excitement initially, and you get to see the camera footage off someone's iPhone through a fence, and it's so cool, and you want it all. And then a week or two in, you're like, these stats don't matter. Who cares? Let's move on to the regular season. And that is normal, and I kind of see where you're coming from.
Clay, I by the way, and thank you very much, Clay, for coming on today, because I will say this. I texted Clay yesterday. Well, I sent him a voice message yesterday asking him to come on. I begged him to come on because he's got other priorities. I know he was on Chatterbox Reds last night. Had I known that, I, of course, would not have asked you to come on today. I didn't want to make you do double duty. But obviously, if you want to listen to double duty, Clay, Chatterbox Reds, that podcast is available out now, so go listen to that. And then listen to this. And I hope I don't repeat a ton of questions. I was listening to it on the way in this morning, so hopefully I don't ask too many repeats. But, Clay, I want to say, how do you rate my Marge Simpson voice, real quick, before we start this?
I got a voice memo or message, was not sure what to expect. When I clicked on it, I was legitimately terrified. That was an incredible Marge Simpson. If anyone has not heard it, I replayed it multiple times because I was truly shocked. Not only the cadence, the sound, but even like the verbiage that was used. Like, if you put that much effort into your day job, Elliot, you could really go places.
I'll prove it. I'll prove it.
All right.
Homie, where's Bart and Lisa? Now we've got Clay Snowden on, homie.
See now, and by the way, it hurts my voice every time. All right, that's enough silly stuff. I'm going to still be silly, though. Outside of Ellie De La Cruz this spring, Clay, who has been the guy that you've looked at and be like, all right, I'm very, very impressed with how he's playing right now?
For me, it's CES. Christian Encarnacion Strand, after the injury that we saw last year and the just flat out poor performance, knowing how big of a piece he could be for this team, bringing power to the lineup, bringing in some ways stability to the lineup, and a lineup that kind of missed having another guy, right? And it felt like there's a collection of guys who should be your fourth, fifth best player on a team instead of your first, second. So adding Christian Encarnacion Strand, a guy who I think has the potential to hit 30 home runs, especially in this ballpark, to this lineup is huge. So this spring, it wasn't even about, for me, it wasn't about can he hit this, that, or the other. I just want to see him leave the yard a few times and show that injury is behind him. And I feel like he's done that so far. So for me, it's a big check in that box.
I like CES. I know Jacob's going to say I'm a CES hater, and Nick Kirby's going to say I'm a CES hater.
You said you're a CES hater.
No, I don't. I never said those words. I think CES could be really good. I just think a lot of this Reds roster has so many, like, if that guy can be good, if this guy can be great, if this guy can repeat. So when you weigh the expectations for this season, is it, if they're healthy, it's a playoff team, or is it still, we're still a couple pieces away, let's see what they're able to do? Are we still trying to build off of that 2023 season?
Oh, we just have a lot of players we don't know enough about. CES has the potential to hit 30 home runs. He has that ability. Like, he has that in his bag. He's not Jacob Hurtubise, and we're saying maybe he can get to 30 home runs. Like, that's impossible.
Yeah.
But CES also swings at everything. He's going to have to make better decisions and decide when to get his A swing off and when to lay off a pitch. If you can't do damage with that pitch, don't swing at it. And that's something that he'll have to learn. So we'll see if he makes that adjustment. But you're right. There's a lot of players in this lineup that we either A, don't know enough about, or B, we need to see a healthy season out of them. Matt McClain, like we've seen his potential. It's still a relatively small sample size, less than 100 games, and then missed all of last year. So, like, even though we think he's great and we think he could be X, Y, and Z, like, he still has to show that twice. Let's not forget Jonathan India came in, awesome rookie year. Everyone had sky-high expectations, and then he kind of plateaued around a league average player. So all because you've had one good sample size, and that's kind of where we're landing with each of these players. Will Benson, like, cool, he had a good spurt here, and like Spencer Steer was good for this one season, but not as good that season. Like, there's these players that have these back and forths, and at the end of the day, we just don't have that many veterans on the team, so you don't have a large enough sample size of multiple seasons to really say what they are. So yeah, it's a roll of the dice. And it's one of those teams that the outcomes are all over the place, and that's why it's kind of fun to dream on, but also kind of, whoa, let's pump the brakes. It's because there's so many different outcomes that could happen.
Speaking of sample sizes, Noelvi Marte, I would say, has a pretty small sample size as a Major League Baseball player. But last year, I mean, it wasn't good. Whatever happened with the steroid stuff, he came back from that, and he became one of the worst players in baseball. He went to, I think, winter ball, terrible there. He was terrible during the spring. Have we seen the top of this guy? Like, I don't want to write off a 22-year-old or however old, Noelvi Marte is, but I feel like there's been such, drastic regression that I don't know if I'm ever going to buy stock in to bringing him back up to be a Cincinnati Red to contribute for a team that's hopefully going to make the playoffs at some point, right? I mean, God willing, this team ever gets really good, and we have to have a bona fide third baseman out there. I don't trust, at least at this second, Noelvi Marte can be that guy. Do you still have the belief that he's going to be able to be that guy?
I think he has to start over. I mean, I would be totally, if they said you're starting in AA, I wouldn't care. I would say that's fine. Because honestly, he's not been that great in AAA. Like, he wasn't like beating down the door. He was good and he showed flashes. And when he came back from injury last year, or excuse me, suspension, we saw it. I mean, it trickled over into the field where he was just flat out lazy. I mean, you cannot be making some of those errors that he was making. And for me, it was between the ears. There was some mental thing going on there. And granted, he had a miserable season from start to end. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. If he comes in and just says, I need to reset, let me start all over. Forget the success I had in 2023. Forget 2024. I want to start over. And he can buy into that, go back to the minors, and work his way back, earning his way back. Right now, he has not earned anything. Right now, he is a minor leaguer who happens to be lucky enough to be on the 40-man roster. He has to earn every single bit back because I don't think he's in good graces at all right now. And, maybe he does become a trade piece at some point in time, and we could debate how much value he has. And I bet you there would still be a team or multiple teams interested, and who knows what that return looks like. I still think his best chance of success is working through the minors and in the Reds organization.
I'm glad you brought up trade piece because the Cincinnati Reds traded Luis Castillo for him. They traded him for Levi Stout, Andrew Moore, and Arroyo as well. Those four guys at the time we thought were going to be pieces here in Cincinnati. We thought that trade was going to be great for us. We thought we got a haul, as it were, get crawled. When you look back at that trade in 5 years, do you think you're going to be as happy with it as you were when it first happened?
The one thing to remember about that trade is Marte and Arroyo were extremely young top 100 players. Yeah. And like we've seen so many times with these extremely young talents, there's various outcomes. You can be 18 years old and become Ellie De La Cruz, or you can become Noelvi Marte. So at the time, it looked great. Here's these flashy, toolsy prospects with a long way to go. And of course, we got more information about them. And really, it's all down to Edwin Arroyo right now. And to be honest with you, I'm not as high on Edwin Arroyo as most people are. I think we know where we all stand with Marte. And I think Arroyo is a solid player who I do think will be a major leaguer and have a fine career. But I don't think he has any type of I don't see the star power. I see more of the average to slightly above average. Like, he's going to have to tap into a lot more power, and he still can. He still can. He's very young. I know we've been saying that for years, but he also missed a year of development. Plus glove, we'll see how he transitions through the minors. Big year this year for him to show his worth.
All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to take a quick break for the radio, ESPN 1410 Wing AM. We're going to come back with Clay to do another short segment, but we will be right back. ESPN 1410 Wing AM. We are Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Welcome on back, ESPN 1410 Wing AM, Off the Bench. Jacob Tissick, Casey McAllister, Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, and joined by a contributor, MLB writer and contributor for Just Baseball, at Clay_Snow, but that is S-N-O, no W. That's Clay_Snow, S-N-O. Is that correct, Clay?
You tell me, buddy. I'm sure it's in front of you, not me.
It's your handle. I got a guy named, shout out to my guy Houdini. He changes his @ every other week, so I got to try to memorize whatever he's changing it to. But yours is the same thing. Now, for those of you who don't know Clay, he was a big writer for the Athletics when they still had a franchise. Now, Clay, I believe, destroyed the entire franchise and sent them away to Las Vegas or Sacramento, wherever the hell they're playing now. Now you're focused on the Detroit Tigers.
I want to clear the air. I've never said this in public. I'm going to say it.
Okay.
I volunteered to do the A's for Just Baseball because no sorry soul would. I said I would do it. I do not care. I like the fan base. 3 months in, I said, this is mentally unwell to stay up till 2 a.m. every night watching this piss-poor franchise. Sorry if I can't say that. And I said, let me switch to a team that I've actually kind of cared about throughout my life, the Detroit Tigers, and now I'm happy. I have less gray hair, even though I'm losing a lot of hair. Different story, different day.
You got the Tigers to the playoffs, so I guess something's working. But we're going to go back to the Reds. I'm going to go back to the Reds. You talked about Will Benson yesterday with Nick Kirby. Again, Chatterbox Reds, that podcast is available out right now. You talked about Will Benson a little bit. When you look at the outfield as a whole, and this isn't really a Will Benson question, but I think he plays a part in it. Do you think it's going to be a little bit better than what people, at least the outside perspective is of what this outfield is? Because I do think there's somewhat of depth, right? Whether or not Will Benson's up at the start, whether or not it's done at the start, whoever you got, there is an amount of players there that could be serviceable at the major league level if an injury happens. So my question to you would be, is it a little bit better than what people are thinking?
No. I don't think it is at all, actually. I think that Spencer Steer probably has the highest floor of that group, and he's injured. I think TJ Friedel is injured often and has a pretty limited ceiling. He had that one incredible season. I just find it difficult for him to reach that level again. Now, I actually think Austin Hayes will have the highest WAR out of the outfielders, to be honest with you, but that's not because I think Austin Hayes is incredible. It says more about the others. The Reds are a collection of number 4 outfielders, like the 4th outfielder on a roster, /5th / this guy's bouncing up and down between AAA and the majors. Like, I think that's what their entire 40-man outfield roster. It's this long with 8-9 names, but they are all relatively close I would say Steer and Friedel and Hayes are slightly above the others, but at the end of the day, no, I don't think that this team has a super high outlook for the outfield, and it's why I think that they should have targeted Luis Robert, and why I think that there still could be some variation of a move during the season for an outfielder.
I think the Gavin Lux, I know people are saying Gavin Lux can go out and play in the outfield, but my argument against it is he's played, 40 games out there. I don't think that you're getting anything defensively in right or left field with Gavin Lux that you're not getting out of anybody else. I want Gavin Lux to be in the infield, and that's why I agree with you. I would have targeted an outfielder. I would have been hesitant to give Nick Martinez that contract. Had I known, I wouldn't have gotten an outfielder because the Reds' offense was a problem last year. It absolutely was a problem. I know Nick Martinez, what he did was great. He was available. He stepped into every role that the Reds needed him to make. But Gavin Lux, I don't really know what he is. And my question to you, I guess, the Dodgers made some moves yesterday. They seemingly traded Gavin Lux, I thought, to give Ha-Sung Kim the role that he had. Ha-Sung Kim, Bobby Miller, Ha-Sung Kim, Bobby Miller, Michael Chavez, Eddie Rosario, all sent to minor league camp. So why did they get rid of him? And what do you think Gavin Lux's role will be this year with the Reds?
I'm not as big of a Gavin Lux fan as the majority, I'd say. This is a guy with multiple years of experience, and a lot of people are focusing on the second half, which, keep in mind, is not even a half. It's not half. It's less than half. If the swing changes he made translate, great. He doesn't hit for power. He's around a league average bat, and he's not a great defender. So to me, it's, he's a good piece to have and like a piece of the puzzle. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I don't think he's going to break out and become some type of, juggernaut in this lineup. And if he does, great. You can clip it. You can do whatever you want with this. I couldn't care less, but I'm just not ready to buy into that level. And again, like you said, you watch Dodger games, and I watched a lot of Dodger games, and there's a reason why they were willing to kind of move on from Gavin Lux. Like, he's a solid player, but he's not, like I said, he's not like flipping your lineup around from mediocre to great. To me, I'm glad that the Reds are getting creative. I'm glad that they're trying something different and being more aggressive for a trade. I wish that there was somebody with more power that they would have added. And now there's more pressure on Ellie and CES and others to provide that power.
Speaking of Ellie and CES, the infield alignment, I see fans complain about this, I think, every day on Twitter. It's Ellie needs to go to third, or Ellie needs to go into the outfield, or Matt needs to go to short, and then Gavin Lux goes to second. When you look at the talent that the Reds have right now, what is your perfect defensive alignment? And do you think that the Reds would ever make that permanent move of Ellie to third base?
Yeah, I think that they would eventually, but not yet. Ellie has the ability to be a really good shortstop. He needs more time. When you're talking about a guy this tall with this many long levers, it's harder to play shortstop. You don't see a ton of tall shortstops for a reason. And, O'Neal Cruz just moved to center field last year, and I think Ellie could eventually move to third, and I think he would be elite defensively at third. I don't think it's this season that they should do it. Give him some more run. See if he can correct, because I do think he has that ability to be an elite shortstop, which is hard to find. McLean's a very solid shortstop. If he ever ended up being the Red shortstop, I would be perfectly content. Edwin Arroyo, who we've already mentioned, could be an option there as well. I think that the Reds are going to go shortstop Ellie, McLean at second, and kind of figure it out at third. Who earns that playing time? I personally value defense more than what the Reds have maybe shown that they value defense, and I also value third base defense more than second base defense, something that they haven't always shown as well. But I will say that having Matt McLean back is big for the defensive makeup of this infield. Replacing Jonathan India, who granted was better defensively at second last year, McLean just has a higher ceiling, if you will, defensively.
I think that too, and I could be wrong on this. When you're the face, or at least when you're a face of the league like Ellie De La Cruz is, and you play that premier spot at shortstop, would you expect like a Scott Boras or maybe even Ellie, maybe not this year, but maybe a couple years down the road, like I'm advertised as one of the best shortstop, if not the best shortstop in baseball. I would be unwilling to move positions. I think you're seeing a little bit in Boston right now with Devers and Alex Bregman, and he's like, no, I'm the third baseman. I'm not moving my spot. Do you think there'd ever be any protest there? If I mean, I know Ellie's so young and he's still on that first deal, so maybe he doesn't have a ton of power. But do you think that protest would ever come by maybe Boras or him?
I don't know. I mean, that's years down the road.
What?
There's so much that needs to happen between now and then that I'm not gonna paint Ellie as somebody who could bring up a protest, but I do think he would be willing to move to third because third basemen still get paid huge amounts, and most shortstops end up moving to third at some point. And if he does move to third and is as elite as I think he can be at third, I'm talking like I think he could be the best third baseman defensively in the league type of player. So if that does happen and he does move there, like he's going to get paid the same way that he would get paid at short, to be honest with you, because if people who think he's average or above average at short, well, now he's elite at third, there's going to be that price difference either way. So I think he'll get paid a gazillion dollars no matter where he plays.
I think that's fair. I just remember, when Tyler Stevenson had all those injuries at one time, and everybody's like, he's now our first baseman, right? And I think Tyler Stevenson said, he's like, no, I'm the catcher. I'm not moving positions. Now, obviously, a lot would have.
It is funny. It is funny how sometimes we have these narratives run on Twitter for however long, and then we tend to forget about them. Like that was something that everyone decided he was injury prone when he had one season of injuries, really. And that's why it's, and then we forget that these things ever were talked about and everyone just kind of moves on. So, I think Elliott short is fine. I don't think anyone needs to hit the panic button. I know the errors were an issue. I also know that Ellie is talented enough that you can't compare him to the normal person. If it reminds me like when Elliott is on the tennis court, like I know he cannot hit his second serve in, but like at this point he doesn't have the ability to improve. Ellie is a different breed than Elliott, right? So like Ellie has the ability to improve at a level that the average human can't. So whatever his limitations at short were last year, he could flip that in an offseason because he has that type of talent that we just aren't used to seeing.
Do the Reds, and this is my last question for you, Clay. Thank you again, Clay Snowden, Just Baseball. He's on Twitter, at Clay_Snow, no W at the end of Snow. Clay, your predictions for the NL Central this year. I know we got the Cubs in first, but do you think the Reds outplay the Milwaukee Brewers?
To be honest with you, no, because I just will not go that far until I actually see it happen. Too many times I've counted out the Brewers. I do not care what their roster looks like. They have earned that respect. Year after year, they lose this player, that player, this guy you've never heard of is inserted into the lineup, whatever it may be. They continue to churn out winning seasons. Until I see something different, I'm not going to just project the Reds to be better because they got Gavin Lux and Brady Singer and whatnot. Like the Brewers have earned the top. I think the Cubs offseason, I hope Reed's not listening, but I think that the Cubs offseason was incredible. I really love what they did. It's not like hang the banner best offseason ever or anything like that, but I love what they've done. And I think that the Cubs are a good team. And I still think that the Reds are going to have to prove that they're better than both of those teams. I'm not saying that they can't or that it's, impossible. They're not light years away or anything close to that. But like we said in the first segment, there's going to be some players who either take a big leap forward or maybe stabilize or even take a step back. There's just too much unknown to really say this is what we expect going forward from player X, Y, or Z.
Well, thank you, Clay, very much for coming on today. I appreciate it. Double duty on Chatterbox in a span of 12 hours, so thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. Go Spartans. You're a Michigan State guy, so go Spartans this March. If you want to do a bracket, hit me up. But I'll let you know that I'll let you know that information when I get there. Clay, thank you. I have to get you on. Every preseason I get one Clay Snowden interview, so I needed to get this one out of the way. Thank you very much for coming on, Clay.
I'm willing to come on more often if you just give me a little bit more notice. Sounds like a personal problem, but thank you so
That's
much.
not. Oh, come on. All right, that's it. Clay Snowden, ESPN 1410, Wing AM, Chatterbox Sports Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Jacob Tissett, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Justin Kinner, and that was Clay. So thank you guys very much. We're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
All right, and we welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett, Casey McAllister with you here. Shout out to Clay Snowden for giving us some time. Yes, not just on Off the Bench today, but on Chatterbox Reds with Nick Kirby and company. Again, you can get the Chatterbox Reds podcast wherever you get your podcasts, so take advantage of that as well as Off the Bench. So appreciate you guys. Welcome back. If you do us a favor, hit the like button down at the bottom. We appreciate that for our listeners and viewers, I should say, on YouTube. And then those listening to us in Dayton on radio, we appreciate you guys as well. You can watch the show weekdays, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon. Or, of course, you could wait until listen to it on radio. However you choose to listen to us, thank you nonetheless. Yeah, you guys talked about that Tyler Stevenson thing. That was like a big talking point. I think he had like 3 different IR stints in one season. And all of them were collision plays. All of them were, and it was one of those where, and he was, remember at this time too, rebuilding, not a lot of weapons in that lineup. And he was your best hitter. And it was one of those where every time you start to get him rolling, he's out for a long period of time. And it's because of those collisions. It was like, you have to find a way to keep him in that lineup. And to play the most physical position in baseball, you do got to, at the time you had Joey Votto. So it was, with the DH coming, do you split, at bats at first base? Maybe you just straight up play him at first base and just have Joey Votto a DH at that time. So yeah, it's kind of a forgotten narrative as far as that goes. But yeah, I don't think once last year we even talked or mentioned the idea of Tyler Stevenson not being the catcher for the Reds because of those injuries. So
I think a lot of that came from his progression as well, not even just staying healthy. I mean, up until last year, he was, pretty close to just objectively bad defensively behind the plate. And he was a good enough bat that you figured out a way to get him into the lineup because you needed to have that bat in there, and he was the best catcher we had. Last year, he was just good. He was just a good catcher. It was really inexplicable how he took that jump in one offseason to being a really substantial piece of this defensive lineup at the catcher position. And I think just because of, obviously, he was able to stay healthy and play a lot of games last year, but the fact that he played a lot better, I think eased a lot of those concerns as well.
And by the way, like I mentioned it to Clay, but he didn't want to move at all. He had no interest in it because there is a pay discrepancy between the catcher and the first base position. I think the catcher is the quarterback per se, right? And he's going to be treated like he's going to get paid like it. He's in command out there. He's calling the game. I will say, we talk about pitch framing and what it means to be a good catcher. I know Reed's out there, and if Reed wanted to come in, he could. But my question to you guys too would be, if the MLB continues with the pitch, with
ABS.
Correct. Yeah. If they continue with that, what does that do to the catcher position? You know what I mean? Like, does it diminish completely what that role is? Because essentially, when you play wiffle ball with your buddy, you don't even use a catcher.
Right.
You just use a chair and you throw it back there and you try to hit the chair. Is that the position? Is that what it becomes? Obviously, you have to throw down to second and third. You have to try to get outs, and you have to be a solid player in that way too. But I do think it does take away a little bit from it. And I'm wondering how that will make that position in about 20 years from now. If it's going to be the same thing, you have to be a really good catcher defensively, obviously. And again, you have to still call the pitches. You still have to make sure the pass balls are limited and everything like that.
Even with the pitch com now added a couple years ago, the calling a game is diminished in terms of what you have to do mentally.
Yeah, that's a part of the game that I wonder how that goes moving forward, because it is such a weird thing.
I think it comes down to what that model is.
Yeah.
If it's the model we're seeing right now in the minor leagues, where it is that challenge and then the batters have to challenge the calls and everything like that, I think that certainly still keeps a lot of the meaning for the catcher, because then even the framing and the stuff along those lines can sway the challenges. And then you don't even see the ABS. Whenever it inevitably comes down the line to fully automatic, it's going to come down to who can physically catch the ball and who can throw it down to second.
Correct.
And who's the second DH. Those are going to be the three questions.
Yeah, and Reed did mention in here, pitchers call their own pitches now, so that is something I forgot about. And they got they still do the buzzer thing, right?
Yeah, they click the buttons or whatever.
Click the little buttons, and Reed says framing will no longer be a thing, which would be interesting. I think that's an interesting thing. Do you guys like that, by the way? Because I know people have a mixed reaction to it when they see it, because it is like the tennis. Like, if you ever watched a tennis match, even if it scrapes. Even if it scrapes a little portion of the zone, right, it's going to be called a strike. And I do think the way umpires call games, and I've complained about umpires for as long as I've been alive, and that's what every fan does, and when it doesn't go their way. But I do think there is something to some umpires call a game consistently differently than what that zone would say, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I do think you're going to lose out a little bit on that, and obviously it's going to come not this year, but probably maybe in a few years. Do you guys like that system?
I love the human element in sports. I love the chain gang in the NFL. I love the umpire in baseball. I think that gives fans something to be mad about. And maybe that's a dumb excuse, but it's certainly fun. And it's part of sports, and change is scary in sports. And eliminating the human umpires and refs, that's a pretty drastic change. But I think when you boil it down to the foundation of the point, we want to get calls right. And it feels dumb to hold back on getting stuff correct just because you like a little bit of a human element. I think I'm certainly a guy that leans towards no ABS, but whenever you talk about it for more than about 5 seconds, that's a nonsensical point to have, because you have the technology to get it right.
Yeah.
So why would you willingly get it wrong?
And I know Ellie De La Cruz, too, was like, I don't know what that actual stat is. If somebody remembers what it was, please put it in here. But he was called out on strikes with pitches out of the zone, I feel like, more than just about anybody last year.
Most in the league last year.
So that's a player that we need to have that system be on for. I don't love it. I know there is different tendencies with umpires. My whole thing, though, is what Jacob just said. If I know the answer to the test, you just got to put it down.
Yeah.
You don't get to just play guessing games when you have that information available to you. And Reed does mention, too, regarding the catcher question before, the only thing a catcher will be responsible for is throwing and blocking. So you have more hitter-friendly catchers. They don't need to be good game managers, which I think would be a shame for that position in baseball.
Yeah, just lessening the responsibility load for them down a bit. The ABS thing has been interesting. Obviously, been running throughout spring, which is weird because it's not carrying over into the regular season. So I know that Terry Francona's mindset on this has been like they're not even using it. I mean, they're using it, but he has told his hitters, like, okay, we're not challenging anything. Like, what's the point of trying to get in that rhythm? It's changed throughout spring, I guess. I was listening and watching some of the game yesterday, so now he's changed his tune a little bit. Terry Francona has had the younger guys that have used the ABS system in the minor leagues who are familiar with it and are used to using it and the challenges and everything. They're allowed to use it. The veterans, late in the game, if it's a close game and an opportunity to challenge something, he's kind of given them a little bit of leeway to do it. What I did find interesting is, baseball is so the unwritten rules of baseball. Well, now there's like new unwritten rules being written. The Cowboy was pissed off about something. I forgot who it was. 2 games ago, he was complaining during the broadcast yesterday that guys are challenging pitches so early in the game, and I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Like, that bothered him. I am curious your guys' thoughts. Like, I don't see a problem with challenging at any point if you have the opportunity to do it, but he was really irked by that. He thought it was bad sportsmanship and I wish I remember the player's name that he was talking about that was executing the challenge like in like the first or second at bat of the ball game. He was not pleased with that by any means.
I think it's going to take some time for us to determine what these unwritten rules are.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever something new comes in, there's going to be something people get mad about, whether it's the timing or how often you use it and stuff like that, and when you use it. There's going to be unwritten rules about any kind of new technology that's added to the game. I think we have to wait a little bit to figure out what those are.
I think honest to God, I forget, again, I'm like Kenner, same boat. I saw a clip, I think it was Scherzer. He was thrown to a former teammate, and he called a challenge on the very first pitch of the at-bat, and the very first pitch of the game. And the pitch was way outside, and he just wanted to do it to rattle Scherzer. I do think that's going to come into play. I think that would be a factor in big moments at some point. You got the bases loaded, full count, or something like that. Maybe it's a 1-1 count or something like that. And whether or not that's a strike, it's going to throw off the pitcher. So I think as we develop what that's going to look like in Major League Baseball, I think we'll have to, like Jacob said, kind of relearn what it means to be an unwritten rule, because that's going to be interesting.
I'm pro write them down or don't care about it.
I agree. I remember Joey Votto tells this story. And I think it was against Roy Halladay in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It was during the no-hitter. And Joey called time during the at-bat once, right? You put your hand up.
Right.
And I used to do this all the time when I played baseball. I was a borderline troll when I played. I just tried to piss off everybody. And you call time as much as you can. So Joey did it once and he did it twice. And Halladay said he got absolutely furious at him. But it's just interesting. It's just another way to throw off the pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, no different. Other sports, you call a timeout to freeze a free throw shooter or freeze the kicker. I mean, you're just trying to get in the heads of these people. And again, there's loopholes. There's ways to kind of abuse some of these new changes as well. Look, I can't believe I'm bringing up volleyball to compare to this situation. Volleyball added challenges like a couple years ago. And it's abused now because now what they do is when they run out of timeouts, they just challenge some BS play just so that their team can come over to the sideline and they can get all these extra timeouts.
That's kind of awesome.
And it pisses people off. Yeah, and there's nothing you could do about it. So you get the challenge card, you get X amount of challenges per set. You only get like 2 or 3 timeouts per set, whatever it is. But when they run out of timeouts in a close game, close match, whatever you call it, they throw the challenge card down. Officials go and they're looking at the monitor like, I don't really know what we're looking at. I'm like, you're not looking at anything. You're just sitting here so that they can get extra timeouts because we called them all. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It's pretty good.
Either way. All right, so Chase Burns, the Reds' number 2 pick in the draft last year, their number 1 prospect in the minors right now. We've seen one outing of him, and it was a fantastic outing, and it's gotten us all really excited about the prospect that he is and what he's going to bring to the table throughout his Reds career. And the Reds have been fortunate to draft and develop some really talented pieces over the last couple of years, and that's what has led to Terry Francona to want to come out of retirement to come be a part of this youth movement in Cincinnati because of the job that the Reds have done. You could complain about how they spend money, don't spend money, roster construction, but what they've done from a drafting and developing standpoint, it's kind of hard to argue that that's one thing that they have not done a bad job at. They've done a very good job as far as that goes. Chase Burns could be added to that list of super talented young up-and-coming players for this Reds team. He was interviewed by MLB Network, and he was talking about his goals and expectations for this upcoming season. Obviously has a close relationship with Brett Lauder. He had a lot to say, but what caught my attention was his goal for this upcoming year. Take a look.
What? We don't have a...
Maybe.
We don't have a clip of that.
Oh, was that... We put it. It was put in the chat. That's our bad, Casey. That was our bad. It was put in. Justin. We will have that clip in a second.
We will have that clip. Buying time. Jacob, that's a nice hat. Where'd you get that hat? Is that hat new?
I got it online.
Did you really?
I got it online.
What's it say?
I don't think it's new. I think it's from Lone Rider Ranch. It's a company from California.
You look like a Jets fan. I'm just saying. It looks like the Jets, like from far back. I mean, it does, but it doesn't.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
Elliot,
enough.
what about your hat? You a Reds fan? You a big Reds fan?
That's definitely a new one.
We filled the time. Casey, go ahead. Roll the clip.
Take a look.
We're joined now by the Reds' 2024 first-round pick, Chase Burns, and you've been through, a decent amount, even though you've not thrown an official pitch yet. What's it been like for you to come here? It's your first spring training of any kind, and then to be in big league camp. How have you been taking everything in?
A lot of different emotions. I've been nervous and excited just to be around these big leaguers and, getting to learn from them and seeing their routines. It's really cool. It's breathtaking.
Rhett Lauder comes out of Wake Forest the year prior, makes it to the big leagues in a year. Does that sort of throw the gauntlet down for you? Are you hoping that, like, man, if things go right, I can follow the same kind of quick path and help out in Cincinnati sooner rather than later?
I love competition, and I love messing with Rhett Lauder. So, I always tell him about his strikeout record that I broke, so hopefully I can get to the bigs faster than him. But it is a goal of mine, and to have a guy like that I can lean on and ask questions about, he's been really cool, and I hope to follow his path.
Coming up soon, you have the spring breakout game. You've not thrown an official pitch yet. In some ways, this is your introduction to maybe pro fans, to Reds fans on a slightly larger stage. How much are you looking forward to being a part of this game where you have the entirety of the Reds system in one dugout at one time?
Yeah, it's really cool to see a bunch of these guys and me get this opportunity to kind of show ourselves to Reds fans and play on a bigger stage. So I'm looking forward to it.
Again, that was Chase Burns in his interview with MLB Network. And again, one thing that caught my attention when he said a goal of his, we saw Rhett Lauder get called up a year after being drafted. And obviously a lot of competitiveness between him and Rhett Lauder going back to their college days, of course. But he said a goal of his is to be called up within a year of being drafted, and obviously that would be this upcoming season. We've only seen one outing from him in spring, getting probably way ahead of ourselves. He faced 3 batters, striking out all 3 in 1 inning of work. Looked fantastic doing it, but I'm looking forward to his next outing whenever that time comes. But his goal is to obviously be called up within a calendar year of being drafted. Obviously that would be this upcoming season. What's your guys' thoughts on the possibility of that potentially happening this year?
That'd be great. Burn it down. Force their hand.
I don't know if I want him to be up. Obviously, I'm curious to see what role fans always say I want this pitcher to be in the bullpen and close games. I would love, and I know I've said it. I think I said it with Hunter Green, and guess what? I was wrong on that one. I would love, guys. It's just whenever I see a pitcher, and this is just how much the game has changed. When I see a pitcher throw 102, I'm like, you need to be the closer. I want you to be the closer so you don't break your arm when you throw 25 of those a game as a starter, right? I would love him to come up and be a closer. I know realistically that's not the option. So. As a starting pitcher this year, I would like to see what he does to start, in the minors. I would like to see how that goes. Rhett Lauder, I thought, was really, really good. He came up and was really, really good. So I have no doubt in my mind that he would be good the second he came up. But I'd like to see what he does first, and then we go from there.
I'm incredibly against moving great players to less valuable positions in every facet. So the same take I have with moving Elliott to the outfield will be the same take I have with Chase Burns going to the bullpen. If you think he can be a starter at any point in time,
let me ask you this. Given all the injuries that happen in Major League Baseball, guys throwing 103, and you're like, and all the Tommy Johns, I feel like there's 400 Tommy Johns, Garrett Cole being shut down because of it. Guys that throw that hard, I just think, and especially now with the pitch clock, you're throwing faster than you would have been before, right? I do think that it does play a factor later on in your career.
For sure.
And I do think that there's an option where if you throw that hard, you're going to be one of the best closers in the game. And I don't think there's anything wrong. I understand what you're saying.
But is being one of the best closers in the game even as valuable as being like a really good?
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. But it is. I like if you wanted to come up quicker, right?
For sure. And in that case, like this year, in terms of a debut, if Nick Martinez is still really good and Lauder's great, yeah, for sure, get him up there. I would just be very hesitant about a switch.
Yeah,
making him a reliever, that's something I would be very much against.
And again, the Reds drafted him high. They're not putting him in the bullpen.
Right.
So
I think the other thing,
it's just all hypothetical
with what you're saying, which is 100% of a valid concern, Garrett Cole is 34.
Yeah.
So if Chase Burns comes up and has a decade-long career and then has Tommy John, whoops.
Yeah.
Like that sinks. But
you're right.
The last decade was pretty sick.
You're right.
So I don't know. My thing with all these guys is if you think they can be really good at a really valuable position, don't move them off of it.
And this always happens, too, where a lot of times you get guys that are called up to be starters and then they end up getting moved to the bullpen. Rarely, if ever. In fact, it's like once you get called up and you're in the bullpen, you really don't get put in that starting spot. And I know we're going to talk about Nick Martinez, who's the highest paid player on the Reds this year. So there's that rare occasion right there. But I remember not the first Reds rebuild, but coming out of that, 2010s, that first rebuild when you were talking about guys like Cody Reed and Amir Garrett. I mean, Cody Reed was called up to be a starter. Amir Garrett was called up to be a starter. And then you had obviously Chapman, who goes to the bullpen to be a closer. Horacio Iglesias, same thing. But those guys, it was like, man, are we making a mistake having them in the bullpen? Should they be starters? And then you have guys like that are the starters, like Amir Garrett, Cody Reed, who they looked the part to be very good starters. They end up getting moved to the bullpen by the back end of their run in Cincinnati. So it's just that overall movement. You rarely see guys start out in the bullpen and be called up to starters. It's usually starters. They show stuff for a couple innings, but they can't, they obviously don't have the stuff to go long and deep into games consistently. So then you try to take advantage of that lightning in a bottle for an inning or two and move them over to the bullpen. And that's what we see more times than not. But yeah, Elliot, I'm with you. If he's electric like that and there's a spot for him, I would hate not to use him if this team needs a jolt, especially in the bullpen, if there's no room for him in the rotation right now. But at the same time, I'm with Jacob. It's like you just don't do that. Teams don't do that. Does it mean you shouldn't? I don't know. But man, it's a good problem to have. We've talked about this in the past when he debuted. It's a good problem to have if he is so electric that we're having the debate about what should the Reds do with him. Should they be patient and let him go through the timeline, the expected timeline, or do they get impatient and call him up prematurely? I hope they don't do that, but I hope there's a reason to bring him up and not a bad one like injuries.
Yeah, if he's killing it and we have to have the conversation about where he comes up and we can't fit him in the rotation because the 5 guys we have on the Reds lineup or rotation at that point are also killing it, what a great problem to have.
Yeah.
Like that's a wonderful place to be, and I'm sure we'd be pulling our hair out about it in the middle of the summer, but I mean, who cares? That's awesome. If all these guys can live up to their potential, we've talked about it ad nauseum, how great this team can be, how exciting this team can be to watch. We can't have injuries, and we can't have guys, dropping below the floor that we think they have with the limited sample sizes that we have for so many guys. I mean, Clay Snowden just said it. It feels like half the Reds roster is, I hope this guy can become X, or, this guy needs to put up these numbers, or whatever it is, and we haven't seen a lot of it yet. I think it's the same with a lot of the pitchers. I mean, even Nick Lodolo, we talk about him as the locked-in number 2 of this rotation. That's great, and when he's healthy, he certainly has been. He hasn't been healthy for a whole year in his entire career.
Correct.
So how do we just mail that in as part of this rotation and say it's going to be a really good Reds season? I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways that you can nitpick about this Reds roster and rotation and everything about it and be less excited about this season than a lot of people are. But if you just take it at face value and hope for health and hope for some progression from some exciting young players, this can be a really fun team. So at least in March, April, and May, let's hold on to that and hope that we can have some progression and have a really fun year.
Was it Mike Leake? How did Mike Leake just get drafted and boom, right out into the fire? Like, so tough to do. And he's a very, very good starter. He was never elite, but he's a very, very good starter for the Reds. But my goodness, that is so tough to do. There have been way better prospects since Mike Leake that have not been thrown into the fire right away. Rhett Lauder was called up pretty quickly last year, and we've discussed that. If the Reds rotation is just not riddled with injuries, heading into September, I don't even think we see Rhett Lauder at all last year, called up in the month of September. That was just due to the unfortunate circumstances with the injuries or whatever. But, you mentioned that rotation, Nick Lodolo, the number 2 guy in the rotation, Hunter Green, who's the opening day starter, Nick Lodolo, number 2, Nick Martinez, the number 3 starter, of course, and then Brady Singer, who we got to see yesterday. He's the 4th starter in the Reds rotation. Brady Singer goes 4 innings yesterday, giving up 1 hit, no runs, only walked a batter. Look, he's been very, very good. This spring, I think he has like a 2.35 ERA at this point. He struck out 7 yesterday. He's been very good. And he's the number 4 guy. The 5th, they have not named a 5th starter in this rotation right now. I know we discussed this earlier in the week. Who we think it could be is Andrew Abbott, obviously, who's been very, very good for the Reds in recent years. We're going to get to see him for the first time coming up in spring later on today. So I'm very intrigued to see kind of the progression for him. We're 15 days from opening day, so you don't want to push him through too quickly, but I am curious to see just kind of where he's at within this throwing program right now to see if he's going to be ready to go by the start of the season.
It'd be such a kick to the ribs if we're not healthy.
I'm going to be
a single name missing.
I'm not even going to talk it into existence.
Okay, fair enough.
I refuse to talk it into existence because it just upsets me so much.
Fair enough. I mean, Graham Ashcraft is the name that we said probably going to hold on to that 5th spot. If not, Rhett Lauder looks like he's progressing finally, but probably going to start in Louisville, which isn't a bad thing. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think it's a good. I mean, if you have again Rhett Lauder and Burns, in the minors, and you have 2 pitchers like that are waiting just for an opportunity, if it presents itself, the Reds are in good shape as far as that goes. You just don't want to get to that point. That's all. All right, we did good. Case, my bad on that. I did send it. Usually I just put the note that says, hey, we're going to use this on this segment. I didn't do that. I did it with the other video clips, but that was good. That was my bad. But all right, guys, that wraps it up for us on radio. Appreciate, again, Clay Snowden for giving us some time. Spent a lot more time on baseball today than we have throughout the week. free agency is kind of boring the hell out of me right now in football. Maybe it'll liven up today. Maybe it'll liven up today. We'll see.
We'll see. Maybe the Bengals can do something fun.
That'd be fun.
Just one time.
Maybe. Well, we'll keep it going here, but we're done on radio until tomorrow. This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Back. We are back. YouTube only. YouTube only. And I saw this via Twitter, via our own Twitter, at Chatterbox Sports. Or I guess it's at Cbox Sports. At Cbox Sports has updated me on a USA Today article. The writer's name is, I'll just say first name. We'll just call him first name Jesse.
I was wondering how you were going to attack that because I couldn't do that either.
I'm calling him first name Jesse. First name Jesse. He ranked the 28 active ballparks. Obviously, 2 of them destroyed or ruined. 28 active ballparks in Major League Baseball. I've always considered GABP as somebody who gets to go every single night, has the ability, lives 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from the stadium. Maybe I take for granted how cool that stadium is and what that stadium means to me. But it's such a nice ballpark. It's a great place to watch a game. I've been to, I think, 12 stadiums now, 12 ballparks now, and I really do think GABP will always, to me, rank near the top. Just because I think it's cool. You got the river overlooking, you got the smokestacks. I think it's awesome. I like the feature of the double scoreboard. I like when that was added when the All-Star game came to town. I do like that. I've always considered it to be a top half of the league, but right around the half mark, right? You know, there's 30 teams. I'd like to consider JBP a top 15 ballpark because I think it looks cool. I think if you look at other ballparks out there, I think it has, a spirit. It has something about it that I don't think a lot of other ballparks have. So I'm shocked by this ranking. This guy ranked Great American Ballpark 26th out of 28. Obviously, Oakland and Tampa are destroyed. Outside of those 2, they rank the Cincinnati Reds third worst in Major League Baseball. The ones coming behind it, Chase Field in Arizona. Chase Field in Arizona is 27, and he ranked Chicago White Sox's Rate Field at 28, which I actually agree with. I think the White Sox field sucks.
I've heard they have great food, though.
They do have great food. But it is it's hilarious, the picture that he used. There's 4 people in this ballpark. Outrageous that the Reds are ranked 26th. It's absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I love Great American.
Coming in just ahead of the Reds, 25, the Washington Nationals Park, 24, the American Family Field, Milwaukee Brewers. I think that's a joke. Continuing on, I like the Brewers, but come on. Angels Stadium of the Los Angeles Angels. I think that stadium's terrible. It looks it's cool that they got rocks out there, but come on. In 22, you have Texas Rangers Globe Life Field. That just seems like a new age ballpark. I know it's cool to build the big, new age things. I don't think that has a lot of spirit in it. At 21st, Rogers Center in Toronto. I've been to Rogers Center. I wouldn't say it's better than Great American Ballpark. I mean, I experienced it when the roof was closed or when the dome was closed, so maybe I didn't get to see its, all of its wonder, but it's certainly not above GABP, in my opinion. Yankee Stadium ranked 20th. You have the Progressive Field in Cleveland, your Cleveland Guardians, Kinner. They come in at 19. I think Cleveland's one of the most underrated ballparks in the game. I love how open it is. I love the standing room only stuff. It's really cool. 18, Miami Marlins, Lone Depot Park. This is where you lose me because that ballpark sucks. That's a joke. In 17, you have Busch Stadium, the Cardinals. It's a nice. Busch Stadium's cool because you get the arch in the background.
And the Xfinity Live right outside is incredible.
That's right. 16, you got Atlanta Braves, Truist Field. 15, you have
Truist. I mean, that not being in the top 3 to 5 is insane. Truist is incredible.
Yeah. Dakin Park, Houston Astros at 15. Then it's the Tigers, Comerica at 14. I've been to Comerica. Citizens Bank Park, Philadelphia at 13. Kaufman Stadium, Kansas City at 12. I guess we should improve. We should just get some waterfalls.
Yeah.
Citi Field, the Mets at 11. I'm surprised at that one a little bit. Target Field, the Minnesota Twins at 10. You have the Mariners Park, T-Mobile Park at 9. Coors Field at 8. The Rockies, I agree with that one. Dodger Stadium at 7. You have Petco, San Diego at 6. You have Fenway Park at 5. In the top 4, I agree with. I've been to Camden Yards. It's awesome. They rank 4th on this list. Wrigley Field ranks 3rd. I've been to Wrigley. I love Wrigley. Oracle Park in San Francisco. I've never been there, but it's awesome. It looks awesome. I agree with that ranking. And I agree with number 1, Pittsburgh, because that's my absolute favorite ballpark. But the Reds rank 26 out of 28 active ballparks. I think that's a joke. I think that's a joke.
I like GABP. I haven't been to many ballparks, though, to be fair. I've been to Dodger Stadium, I've been to Wrigley, and that's it outside of Great American
Really?
Ballpark.
You've been to Cleveland?
Never been to a game in Cleveland.
How about that?
But yeah, so I've been to Dodger Stadium, I've been to Wrigley, Great American. But Great American does a good job of, for one, the location's pretty cool. I like you said, just kind of looking over the water there, right downtown. But also, it's like you're walking through I know it has the museum attached to it, but it does a great job of honoring the franchise's history as well. Sure. I think they do about a good a job as that as anybody. So I'm a big fan of the ballpark. I don't understand how it could be ranked so dang low as far as that goes, unless they're including just the location. You're right, the Marlins, how are they ranked so high? I mean, outside of it just being in Miami, that's it. What about that ballpark has it ranked so high over everybody else? I wouldn't put it any higher than that. But
I just don't there's some of them. I don't understand how you rank these. I know the Rangers, again, it's a nice upgraded stadium. That stadium has no life to it. It's nothing. It's a nothing. It looks like, you know what it is? It's like that Las Vegas Raiders stadium, just that big box out in the middle of nowhere.
Bad example. Allegiant's awesome.
You think Allegiant's awesome?
Incredible. I mean, mecca of football. It's one of the most beautiful NFL stadiums.
Have you been in there?
I've seen, not for a game, but I've been there.
I think
it's remarkable.
The new age stuff kind of loses me. I like a little bit of the history.
SoFi doesn't even feel like a football stadium when you're walking in. Incredible. I want to go to one of these new ones. I guess Houston's not quite as new, but Houston, Texas, these ones where you walk in and it's like a shopping mall.
Yeah.
And you just go down to the field. I think those sound really cool. I would love to get to more stadiums. Trying to get to 30 by the time I die. Sitting at, I think it's either 8 or 9 right now. So still working my way up. But I love GABP. I'm not going to act like I'm not biased. I'm not going to act like I've seen the best stadiums in the world. But I don't know what's wrong with it. I mean, it's a great atmosphere. Whenever the fans are there and into it, it's awesome. I know it doesn't happen a whole lot, but I think that's the case with most ballparks in the MLB in terms of consistent attendance. It's when your team's good and versus when it's not. I know the Reds haven't been good in a while, but it's a fun place to go, and they have a good fan experience, and I think it's a great place to watch a game.
I've been
Dodger game.
Go ahead.
I remember real quick. I remember when I went to the Dodger game. We were in Los Angeles. We're looking at tickets there just to kind of see what the prices were, and to sit right behind home plate, tickets were like $50. I was like, that's very cheap to go to a Dodger game, and if you sit higher up, the tickets are like $150, $200. So I'm like, well, that's dumb. Can't believe you'd spend more to sit up high. So we got the $50 tickets. We go sit behind home plate. Hotter than hell. It was absolute misery. I mean, the sun just beats down on you. Now I understood very quickly why it was more expensive to sit up top where the shade was than to sit closer to the field. That was the only time I've ever had to buy tickets where I was thrown off by why it was cheaper to sit closer to the game than it was to sit further away. And I learned my lesson very quickly that day. But yeah, it was miserably hot sitting behind home plate.
I think Jimmy's birthday was a victim to this last year. I don't go to day games.
Yeah. You didn't go, yeah. I remember.
On Sunday afternoons, just because I don't like sitting in the hot. I don't like sitting in the sun. It's not fun. It's not a fun time to me. I'd rather just watch it at home. I know that's probably the wrong thing. And maybe if I was a guy who drank a lot of beers, maybe I'd get more involved going to day games and having myself a time. But it's never been me, so I don't do that. I understand why people do. I understand why they love it. I just love night games. I love going to games in the evening. It's cool. It's better. I get to wear whatever I get to wear a sweatshirt. I get to wear whatever I want. So I do like night games a lot better. The stadiums I've been to all of the NL Central. I agree that I think Wrigley is really, really good. I've been to Wrigley, I think, 3 times now. I've been to PNC once. I would rank the Reds third, I think. I'd rank the Reds third, and then I would rank Busch immediately after us, and then a distant drop-off American Family Field or Court, whatever that field is now. I just think the Brewers Stadium. I mean, there's a lot of those domes. It's hard to give it some spirit when it's inside. I firmly believe that. And maybe that's the right call just so they can't, no rainouts when you have a dome, so it's an easy thing. But, man, I like when it's outside and you get to see everything. Coors Field, I've been to Coors Field in Denver. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. Yeah. I was trying to think. I mentioned I went to Toronto. I've been to Camden Yards. Camden Yards is really, really cool. Going out into the right field and seeing, I think, every home run that gets up over that little bleacher section in right field has a little plaque to it. Anything that goes out into the concourse area, it's really, really cool. I'm trying to think of what other ones. I've been to Cleveland. Cleveland's nice. I like Cleveland a lot. I don't know why Cleveland that stadium ballpark doesn't get the respect it deserves, because I do think that's a really, really cool one. Outside of that, I'm losing a couple that I've been to, but I love going to. My goal is to get off to all 30 of them. I know there's not 2 of them right now, but my goal is to eventually get to 30 ballparks. It's one of my sports bucket list dreams.
All right, I'm also. I have. What's
you're
that?
Good. No, I was gonna say you're good. You can go. I was gonna do a quick Bearcat rant, so you're good.
Do the Bearcat rant.
All right.
No, do the Bearcat.
The Bearcats played today at 12:30 against Iowa State. Now, the Bearcats played, I would say, well. Maybe their best game of the season against Iowa State earlier on, a couple weeks ago. They lost the game. They played well. If they're able to play like they did yesterday, and again, we were watching it here for a bit, and I looked at Sean and Jacob, and I'm like, that's the hardest they've played ever. They don't play that hard. They had 18 steals. Now, granted, they turned the ball over a bunch too. They were sloppy. They missed layups like they always are. But there was a passion yesterday in that game that I have not seen for the entirety of this whole season. Not one time have I seen that type of passion. I saw it yesterday. If they play like they played yesterday afternoon, they might win this game today. Iowa State's not really playing for anything. I know that the Big 12 conference would be great for them, or winning the tournament would be great for them. But, man, I don't think they're really playing for a ton. I think the Bearcats are. And based on every metric, the Bearcats are still in position to be in position, as John Rothstein likes to say. If they're able to win, today, I'm going to start to get back in. I'm not in yet. I'm not going to buy back in yet. If they win today, I might buy back in. I might. Because I think that if there's anything to March, it's that these teams with no chance, they all fight to the death. And that's what makes it so cool. So Bearcats, again, 12:30 today. We'll probably do that on Box Lunch. We're going to do Box Lunch today as well. But, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the game. I didn't bet it. I bet on the under yesterday, and I bet on Oklahoma State with the spread. I'm not going to touch this game today. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done trying to win money on the Bearcats. Whatever they want to do, good for them. But, again, Wes Miller, this is a massive, massive opportunity for that guy in this whole Bearcats team. I think Mouse Cop DM'd me yesterday and was talking Bearcats with me for a second, and I told him, I was like, they all played harder. Josh Reed 19 points. They all played harder. Dylan Mitchell 18 points. They played harder yesterday than they've played this entire season. And maybe it's because they're all trying to find new deals and they're all trying to get in the NIL. It was like a little showcase. That's what I think it is, really. But there's the other part of it too. It's maybe they don't want to go. They don't want to go home yet, and maybe they don't want to end their season this early. Because I do think that's a real possibility that these guys actually maybe did care this year. We didn't see a ton of it towards the end, but maybe they did care, and they want to try to win for the city and try to win for Wes. And maybe there's something to that. So we'll see. 12:30 today, the Bearcats take on Iowa State. I would say I'm not optimistic, but I'd be happy if they won.
Does it annoy you? Like, where are you at with? I know we talked before the show. I was like, I'm sure like when they play bad, it pisses you off. But at this point, after it was a horrible. They underachieved throughout this. It wasn't a horrible season, but they underachieved. There's no doubt about it. Did it piss you off just a little that they played so well yesterday? Because it's they clearly have it in them. You looked at those the regular season awards when it came out. I mean, it just looked weird because there's super talented players on that roster, and you're like, how do they come away with so few regular season awards? You know it's in them, and it's like, okay, well, is that on coaching? I've always got on athletes saying, if you need a coach to come to you and say, hey, can you play hard today? You're not a good player then. Like I don't like putting that all on coaching all the time. But I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I feel like, did it annoy you just a little bit yesterday? Because like, you know what this team's capable of, and now you want to come out and play hard. Now's the time to do it, I guess. Make a run, win some games, maybe win the whole damn thing, go dancing in March. But man, this has been there this whole time, and yet they flip a switch on and off way too often.
Wes is pissed. I'm pissed. I get pissed every time they try late in the year. They went on that little NIT run last season. They lost to Indiana State in a tight game to end the year. But they play better for some reason when it doesn't matter anymore. Now, obviously, it technically still does, but you gotta do a miracle run in March to get into the tournament. That's just not a successful season in my eyes. It upsets me greatly that it takes up until this second for them to play as hard as they did. They were doing things yesterday that they've never done before. They were driving they were doing post moves. The UC offense this season's been, we're going to have 5 guys outside of the arc, and hopefully somebody hits a 3 or a contested deep 2 with like 1 second on the shot clock. And they still have that. Like yesterday, they had some terrible shots, but it was a collective effort that I had not seen yet. And it's unfortunate it takes until the very last game of the season to show that, because that's why I get mad at Wes. I don't think that they're well coached, and for some whatever reason, it takes this long to get a message through to them that you have to play better. Dylan Mitchell was making a couple free throws yesterday. You don't see that. You don't see that ever. They shot free throws well at a percentage. I was looking at the numbers yesterday. The Bearcats ranked 340th in the nation in free throw percentage. You know how bad that is, Justin? 340th in the nation in free throw percentage. It's the easiest part of the game. All you do, it's a free basket. That Wofford guy's doing it granny style. And we got guys who can't shoot at a 70% clip, 68% clip, shooting 66% of his team. It's terrible. So yeah, it upsets me, but today we'll see what they do. We'll see what they do today.
To be fair to you and all your guys, that Wofford guy that shoots it underhand, I think he's like a 40% free throw shooter.
But I think he's I think he's like 65% since he switched.
No, he's bad. He still misses them.
Oh, well, we try.
But he looks cool doing it.
He does look cool.
We can try that style.
I think people give him. He's 32% free throw shooter this season.
Last question before we end the show. Do you guys think the conference tournament weeks are better than the first 4 days of March?
This is my favorite 4 days of college basketball.
Really?
Yeah. There's more games.
Ooh. That's why you got mad at me when I said conference tournaments don't matter. But my guy John Calipari backed me up on that. Did you guys see the clip?
No.
He came out and he's never cared about conference tournaments.
What?
But yeah, we'll move that to tomorrow's show. But yeah, I have the clip. I'll share it with you. But yeah,
there's just more games to bet on. So
yeah, that's fair too. There's nothing like that first Thursday in March. But boy, I love having a game whenever I want to watch it on these conference games. And everybody's fighting still. Everybody's still fighting. Calipari might have not, because his team was always pretty much safely in. But I love it.
Bruce Pearl said after the Alabama game on Saturday that it didn't matter to Auburn. They already locked up their seed. It didn't mean a whole lot. Janai Broom was crying on the court. So I think coaches can say a lot of stuff. I think a lot of these players, they want to win their conference tournament.
Yeah. No, they absolutely do.
All right. Well, we'll do that again tomorrow. But I know we're done. You guys have box lunch coming up, and we'll do this again tomorrow. So until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farms.
Let's go Clones.